Hello everybody and welcome back to Unfazed. I'm Lakey.
And I'm Rachel.
And we are so happy to have y'all back here for this 2024 year. After a brief hiatus in 2023, we're ready to get back into it with all the content. We hope you guys had a very Merry Christmas and that you had a great New Year. And for this episode today, we're just going to be talking about what were our picks of the top headlines of 2023. So let's get right into it.
So I think the biggest headline of the year was definitely the attack on Israel, which was so tragic and so sad. If you want a lot of in-depth background to that conflict, please go back to our latest episode and listen to that because we give you a rundown going all the way back to the Bible. And if you're confused as to why we went all the way back there, you just need to listen because it's really good. It really, I think, helps explain to people who don't fully understand what's going on. But anyway, so this was the worst attack on Israel since the Holocaust. And I think at this point there's well over like 1,000 people dead. We don't even know the full number because there are many hostages that were taken that still have not been found. We don't know where they are. Israel is still, their IDF is trying to find them still. So very, very tragic. And obviously this has caused even like a scuffle and an uproar in the West because we have all these protests and things going on for Free Palestine. I think it's crazy the amount of anti-Semitism that has gone on since this attack. I think it really shows where we're at as a country and honestly just in the West in general. I mean, obviously it's not shocking that we have that going on in Palestine and other eastern parts of the world, but this going on in the West is really scary.
Yeah, and I think too, before we move on to just the rise of anti-Semitism, we have to acknowledge some things that I think this conflict shows. The first being, it's never going to be the smart move to give your enemies territory.
Yeah.
That's only going to give them more reason and more validity in their ability to attack you.
Yeah, and in our last podcast, we talked about that because there have been multiple opportunities for Israel and Hamas or Palestine to in the conflict, not because Israel is resistant. It's Israel actually making the effort to extend the olive branch and, stop the conflict. They've tried so many times. They've given Palestine so much land. And even then it's still not enough because ultimately the end goal is to wipe Israel off the map. And so I totally agree because at some point it's like, okay, why do you keep trying to make amends when they clearly don't want that? At this point, it's defend your borders, defend your country. And, there are a lot of people saying, well, Israel just needs to cease fire and all of this stuff. It's Israel's fault because, they started it. Well, one, that's not true. And you can go back to our last episode and listen to that to know why. But two, on October 6th, there was a ceasefire. October 7th, Hamas attacked Israel. So they were the ones that restarted this war and completely changed the game for what's going on. So I think it's very ignorant to say, oh, well, it's Israel that needs to calm down and they need to stop. It's like, okay, well, if you had people come into your borders, into a music festival, and then through the border come in and start slaughtering people, raping them, torturing them, parading their dead bodies around the streets like there's some sort of trophy, then I think you would also be pretty upset. And you would also retaliate because it is about defending your people. I mean, Hamas literally beheaded and burned babies alive, cooked them in the oven in front of their parents.
Right.
So it's like, I don't have sympathy for them. At this point, Israel did not start, at least the recent conflict, and they didn't even start it from the beginning. They didn't start this recent conflict. They had the right to defend themselves.
Right, and now, we have a panel of all these prestigious schools, all their presidents coming onto this panel to testify in front of Congress about the rise of anti-Semitism on their campuses. And instead of acknowledging these statements like from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, or resistance is justified when people are occupied, saying what Hamas did is resistance. That's not at all resistance. That's simply terrorism. We're having these people in this panel, all these like Claudine Gay of Harvard, who can sit there and they can say, you know what? I believe in free speech, so these people can say that, rather than calling it what it is, which is anti-Semitism, and it is bullying and harassment, and they are genocidal statements being said, and they're sitting in front of Congress and they can't even make that claim. They act like they're champions of free speech when in reality on their college campus, if a conservative were to go on that college campus, they would be bullied and harassed, and their event would be disrupted, and there would be nothing said about it. In fact, it's happened at college campuses, and you want to know what happens? The presidents of the college campus usually congratulate and applaud and say how proud they are of the students that act in a horrible way towards a conservative speaker.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that really makes me so mad is like, okay, look at the hypocrisy, because anytime a conservative, either student says anything or club tries to bring someone on campus, Harvard, Yale, these big colleges, these prestigious universities that are supposed to be, you know, the epitome of free speech and, you know, dialogue and everything, they're always like, no, like we have got to shut this down. And, you know, pretty much anytime this happens, there are going to be students that are saying that, but like you just said, it's the university supporting these students who are wanting to shut down free speech, but now they're trying to act like, oh, well, we support free speech. No, what they're really doing is showing their true colors, their true opinions, and their agenda. Clearly, they have a hatred of Israel, a hatred of Jewish people, because the statements that are being said by students in these protests and otherwise online are horrendous and are genocidal. The First Amendment only protects so much speech. It protects a lot of speech, but the First Amendment does not support threats of violence, and that's what's happening. And this specifically Harvard president, Claudine Gay, but other presidents and university officials from different colleges are just like, oh, we support free speech. I think it's a cop-out, and I think it's completely hypocritical.
Yeah. So obviously the Israel-Hamas conflict is a huge thing, but I think even more than that, it's not surprising to see a terrorist regime that Hamas is attack and be disgusting and vile. What's more insane to me is that we have everyday people supporting them over supporting Israel's right to defend themselves and having a nation and protecting its borders. And that kind of goes into our next big topic, which is the border crisis here in America.
Yeah, so the border crisis, if you've been paying any attention to the news, you know that it is a crisis. Depending on what kind of news you listen to, you might get different perspectives about it, which is not a bad thing, but you got to weed out what the truth is. So we have a lot of statistics actually about the amount of illegal crossings. And I'll just say this, first of all, like, it's not that people on our side are against immigration altogether. But the thing is, our immigration system is so broken because there's no efficiency. There's no real checking into these people. There are no requirements. There's no standards. The United States lets in the most immigrants, refugees, migrants more than any other country in the world. So to say that we're not being loving and kind by helping people who, you know, are fleeing war or whatever they're fleeing, or just want to come make a better life for themselves, it's totally false and it's totally a lie. But the other thing is that if we're wanting to be compassionate and caring, we have to care about the people within our own borders. And this border crisis is not loving. It's not compassionate, not only for the people in our country, but for the people coming over. Because you know how many children are being dragged through rivers and tumultuous landscapes and whatnot to get over the border illegally? How many are being sex trafficked? And we have no idea. We don't know who's coming into this country. Then, of course, we have the people here who are being affected by this. So we're just going to get into the statistics. Like, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, which they do come from New York Times. So I think maybe that would be it's like a different type of news source, I feel like, that sometimes you can't always trust. But I think we're strategic in picking that news source because it still shows the reality of what's happening at the southern border.
And it's biased against our own side.
Exactly. So just a little bit of history. Trump obviously was the bomb.com at the southern border. He kept it, he was trying to get it back in shape.
Right.
obviously it's not a battle. Perfect, yes. But so through 2016 through 2020, each year Trump had well below 500,000 of illegal migrants crossing, which is pretty low.
I mean, it sounds like a lot because it is still a lot, but considering everything that was going on and the numbers to compare.
And comparing it to Joe Biden's numbers.
Which we're about to get into is insane. And I think the biggest issue with Trump was not necessarily him, but the Republicans in Congress who would not fund the border wall, even though we had a majority. For 2 years of Trump's term, which is so infuriating.
Right. That is just a reason why everyone needs to go out and vote, and particularly just vote for somebody different.
Yeah. Like, we can't keep voting for these wishy-washy Republicans who don't really do anything that make money off of having these problems continue because they want to get reelected.
You've got to look at the records. So back in 2022, Biden's border crossings for the year equaled 2.2 million. Keep in mind, back in 2020, it was below 500,000.
Yeah.
So that is a humongous increase in illegal border crossings. Then, by 2023, this article came out in October, Biden had almost reached how many migrants had crossed in 2022. So he's already, it was just a few 100,000 away from 2.2.
Yeah, and now we're in 2024, and this, like she said, this was back in October. This was all that they have in October. So once the rest of these statistics come out, we're going to know it's going to be a lot more. And honestly, these are just the known illegal crossings. There are probably a lot more that are going on that we don't necessarily know about, because border security is so overwhelmed because they're not being funded, they're not being paid, they don't have enough workers.
Right.
And the system is so messed up. So it's really just crazy, the difference.
Well, and also too, you think about the largest number of migrants crossing, you don't really think about them coming from Middle Eastern countries. You don't think about them coming from deep in South America. You just think about coming from Mexico. But that's actually not the case. In September, the largest number of illegals crossing the border were Venezuelans.
Yeah.
And we also have lots of people coming from the Middle East, a lot of people coming from Africa, and we have so many people on the national terrorist watch list that have entered the U.S. and we don't even know where they are currently.
And I think that's the scariest thing to think about when it comes to the border crisis, because again, people think that it's unloving to not just let anybody and everybody in the country, but it's not compassionate to the people who took the time, went through the system, and came here legally. It's not compassionate to the people who live within our own borders, because there are so many effects that has. I mean, the drugs running through the border, the fentanyl, the crime,
the increase in crime. And just one case I want to point out particularly was Elizabeth Medina. She was 16 years old, and she was just home in her bathroom, and she was stabbed to death by an illegal immigrant. And
that is not just one random story. I mean, this has continued to happen.
Yes, and keep in mind, this illegal immigrant has a criminal record in America. He's being, I don't know why we can't deport him and keep him out. I basically think, our system is extremely broken.
Yeah.
Our border crisis has become even more of a crisis because of our leadership. And, now we have Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who is trying to make it a crime to cross into America through Texas illegal, and we have the Biden administration fighting him on that.
Yeah, and I think this just goes to show you, and while Republicans certainly have not been perfect on this, but I think it just goes to show you what the Democrats' soft on crime policies do. And that's not even just talking about the illegal immigration, that's also talking about the DAs in these liberal cities and states that refuse to prosecute criminals because of their skin color or whatever it is. We have got so many. There was someone in Nashville, where I'm from, and she's a college student. I think she's from New Jersey, but she goes to Belmont University, and she was shot by a criminal who has a long rap sheet, who just keeps getting let out. Why? Because we have a liberal DA that just keeps letting these criminals out on the streets, and these communities aren't safe. It's not loving, and it's not compassionate, despite what they tell you. They'll tell you that you're not being loving, that it's racism, and that it's discrimination against Black people and all these things, but it's no, I don't care what your skin color is. I don't care where you come from. If you're committing violent crimes, if you're committing crimes at all, you need to be locked up. Exactly. You need to suffer the consequences. That's the only way that we're going to get law and order back. And it's not compassionate, even if, in a lot of these cases, they'll claim, they've got mental health issues or whatever. The thing is, Matt Walsh says this all the time on his podcast, you can only be compassionate to one party. If you're compassionate to the party who is the victim, then you lock up the person who's committed the crime. But if you're compassionate to the person who's committed the crime, it's going to be at the victim's expense and at other people's expense in the community, because then these people are getting let back out and committing the crimes again. And it's so infuriating. And this goes back to the southern border as well, because it is illegal. The first crime is coming into the country illegally, whether you had good intentions or not. And I know that's hard, and I know that people don't like to hear that, but the reality is we can't have everyone. We just can't. And until we get this immigration system fixed and revised, I think we just need to totally halt immigration.
I agree. Even legal immigration. And,
Yeah.
America cannot solve the world's problems ever, but she especially can't solve the world's problems whenever she has so many herself. So we need to get ourselves in check before we try to let in all these immigrants that we don't have space, money, or time for.
Right.
But going on with the soft on crime policies, I think it's very funny, and this is leading into our next headline, that Democrats are so soft on crime except for one person known as Donald Trump. Yeah, so it is no surprise that Donald Trump has been kicked off the Colorado ballot. And since then, he's also been kicked off another ballot too.
In Maine.
So this is definitely a big headline for us personally.
Yeah.
Because this is showing how the whole mantra of our court system, of our judicial system in America, is now becoming guilty until proven innocent. Both of these people that kicked Trump off the ballot, they used that he tried, and he's incited an insurrection, and they took that clause from the Constitution. Keep in mind, Donald Trump has never been tried and convicted for an insurrection, and yet the courts still acted as if he had been, and then they cast him off the ballot. So this is egregious power grabs, and I think it shows how much the left truly fears Donald Trump.
And I think the biggest thing too is people will say, well, Donald Trump was impeached twice or 3 times, however many it was. And okay, here's a great distinction that I want to bring up, because I don't think many people realize this. Bill Clinton was impeached, but he was never removed from office.
Right.
Donald Trump was impeached and was never removed from office. So the impeachment is completely moot if you're not actually removed from office. So the Senate hearing proved that Trump was not actually guilty of this. And obviously we know that this was totally a political move. The left just hates Donald Trump. And I think, like you said, they clearly, even in this, have shown how much they hate Donald Trump and how scared they are of Donald Trump. And I'm going to be frank, I love Donald Trump, but a lot of his recent comments have bothered me, and I really just think his time has come and gone. And I am, at this point, ready to vote for Ron DeSantis because I think he's younger, I think he's better, I think he's more vibrant, more conservative. But I think ultimately this shows how much the establishment hates people who actually are conservative, actually are a threat to them.
Who they can't control.
And they can't control. You can't control Donald Trump.
He has his own money.
And that's why they were saying, oh, well, he's the laughing stock. We're the laughing stock of the country. In reality, that's not true, because all those other countries truly feared Donald Trump and what he would do. Why do you think Russia didn't attack Ukraine while Donald Trump was in office? Why do you think North Korea, kept it together while Donald Trump was in office? Why did China not go in and try to take over Taiwan while Donald Trump was in office? But now those are all real threats because we have a weak president, we have weak leadership. But part of the thing that made Donald Trump so strong was that you never knew what he was going to do.
Right. Well, and you're telling me that Joe Biden got the most votes, 81 million votes, biggest voting turnout in the history of the country, and you are so scared to have an admirable opponent up against you. And I think the only thing that shows for me is that Joe Biden didn't get 81 million votes.
And they know that. Because the election was rigged.
If you got 81 million votes, heck, I'd say anybody can go up against me. I don't care.
Yeah.
So I think that's
I'd be very confident.
Yeah, I think that's the very clear evidence that is coming from this entire situation.
And I think at the end of the day, Joe Biden's people, the Democrats, they know how poorly the country is being run right now, how terrible the economy is, how much people who are just everyday people who might not even like Donald Trump, but they are struggling to make ends meet. They know that it has to do with these horrible policies, and I think they're scared of that, and I think they're scared of what's coming in 2024.
Exactly.
So I think, now it is 2024, which is crazy, but this election year is going to be crazy because there's going to be so much political fighting. There's going to be so many things going on. But I think at the end of the day, the liberals know that they're in for a time.
Well, and speaking of some terrible policies, our next headline is from Pete Buttigieg's terrible policies, working on interstate stuff for us and keeping our roads and our railroads working. Our next big topic would be the train car derailments, but more specifically the train car derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. So we actually took this from usafacts.org. The total number of train car derailments that we've had for this year was 742 at the time of the article's writing, which is that's like a lot. And a lot of these that we were seeing, like East Palestine, Ohio, they had toxic materials in their train cars. It completely disrupted the entire way of life because Biden sent in people, and you know what they did? They burned it. They burned toxic materials, which only put it into one smoke, which is toxic. And then not only is it just smoke, it's toxic smoke. And the economy of East Palestine is it's depressed, and it's hard to go there and be able to live there and really succeed. You know, you're really looking at your blue collar workers, more paycheck to paycheck. Honestly, very similar, I think, to what we see from where I'm from here in Kingsport, Tennessee. But this is just economically destroyed any bit of hope that this city could have had, because the effects of this is going to go forever. Their water is still bad. I mean, the amount of people that I think are probably going to come up with cancer or some type of defect is going to be insane.
Yeah, I think I think we already are seeing the effects of this now, but I'm really scared to see what's going to happen in the next 10, 20 years. And even outside of that particular region, there have been, and you said this already, I think 742 incidents.
These are big
of train car derailments. 742. And Pete Buttigieg is taking, what was it, like 6 months off for paternity leave when he's a gay man that doesn't have to stay home to help his wife, recover. That's what paternity leave is for.
Exactly.
And you don't need 6 months of it, might I add, especially when things like this are going on. I think this, again, just shows you, first of all, this is a political appointment.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the amount of vacations that Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden and his entire administration took throughout this entire year is disgusting, and everyone should be super angered by it.
Yeah.
Because we have everyday people who are struggling, and a lot of this stuff is caused by the federal government's lack of, they're just completely lacking.
And then, of course, the Biden administration was totally trying to ignore it. It took them way too long for Biden to even go down there and visit the people who are affected by this. So if this shows you anything, Joe Biden, the liberals, the Democrats, they do not care about you.
Right.
It has nothing to do with you. They will say all day long, we're the ones that are compassionate. We're the ones that care about you because we're going to give you all this free stuff. One, they never give it to you. And two, if they do, there's like 15,000 restrictions on it. So it's not like it was going to help you anyway. And at the end of the day, they don't care. This was shown by this. And not to mention,
I think they do give people free stuff. They give it to the people who are undeserving. The people who actually need it don't get it. Yeah, the most of the majority of East Palestine are the hardworking blue-collar Americans who are going out and trying to make a difference for their family.
But those are the people that are penalized, and the people who don't deserve it are the ones that get the free stuff because that's how they get their votes.
Right.
And it's really infuriating because, why are the Democrats in Ohio and even honestly the Biden administration, why are they not coming in and trying to do things to help revive the economy there? Why are they not trying to push for more jobs to be there? They don't care.
And where was our environmentalist? Crickets. They weren't there.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, they don't care. It's all political. And that's why I said that Pete Buttigieg was a political appointment, because he was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana?
Yeah.
He has no experience doing this. He has no clue what he's doing. What the Democrats do is they always find a place for their own, even when they have done something horrible or they're totally unqualified. I mean, look at Stacey Abrams.
Exactly.
So I think this is just another example of this. And honestly, bureaucracy is so terrible. It's so inefficient. It's completely bloated. We have way too many people in these positions that get paid a lot of money to do a whole lot of nothing. And actually, I think do more damage than anything. I don't think a lot of the time it's just them doing nothing. I think it's them doing nothing and then also doing more damage.
It's always doing more damage.
And I think this just goes to show. And I really hope and pray that these people in East Palestine don't have a lot of cancer and things that pop up because of it, but it's
inevitable.
I think it is inevitable. It's really scary. So if I were from that region, I mean, even not being from that region, I'd be so enraged. It makes me mad, and I don't even know. I can't deal with it.
Yeah, but just like Rachel mentioned, the Biden administration have no clue what they're doing. One person that we have no clue what they're doing is our next headline, and that is the crazy plane lady.
Crazy plane lady.
Yes, we're gonna put her little video in here.
But I am telling you
So
right
she
now,
was basically yelling at someone
back there
saying,
is
this
not
person
real."
isn't real, this person isn't real. And we honestly don't know what the heck she's talking about. She comes out with this one video, says that the person was demon-y, like saying that he was a Satanist and all this weird stuff, but then you see another video of her and it looks oddly AI.
Yeah.
Sounds AI. It's very weird.
It's like a weird AI apology video. I honestly, this whole
But we
situation-
can't confirm if it was AI.
We have
but
no
I
idea. That's just
swear
our
it
prediction.
looks super AI.
That's really the conspiracy theory. Was her apology really her? Was it real? We don't really know. I think it's really interesting because I don't know. There's this whole thing about lizard people and aliens, and some people were saying
we do
that-
not believe in
we
that.
don't believe in that. But
Yeah.
there were some people saying that the person she was looking at was like a lizard or an alien.
Yeah. No, that's
I don't know.
crazy.
That's crazy.
I think she was crazy. I think she honestly just should have owned up for what it was. She was probably super drunk. She's at an airport.
Yeah.
I think she
maybe
was
high. Who
Yeah,
knows?
who knows? Maybe she was nervous flying, so she mixed some pills and alcohol and was like, woo. But I think the overall thing here is now she's like got this new account. She's rebranding herself, like trying to like make so much money off of this. So I just hope that we don't let her make a lot of money off of
Yeah, I think it honestly could have just been some publicity stunt to get her some attention.
That's also,
But I do think the apology thing was weird. I will say that's the only thing that I think. I mean, obviously the whole thing about her saying this person isn't real was weird because I don't think I think she was just
No.
hallucinating or something.
Yeah, I think
For whether it was drugs,
she did a little
little
hit the
alcohol
sauce.
or whatever. I don't know, but that was definitely a big headline for a little while. Actually,
Yeah, and
so.
it was it was funny, and I was really
Something we could laugh at in the midst of the crazy chaos of this world.
Yeah, and then another thing we could laugh at, because we love sticking it to the libs and we love sticking it to Target,
Yes.
is we had the first successful conservative boycott in the history.
Yeah,
Really,
honestly,
of
I don't
all
know if we've
boycotts
ever
for
had a
us.
really good- So obviously the main one, Bud Light, Dylan Mulvaney, that whole incident was. I mean, I've never drank Bud Light, but you know, people have been boycotting Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch altogether.
Well, and think about this: Bud Light was like the beer of Americans,
And like a manly men and frat boys.
yes, and then they have this like transgender wacko, Dylan Mulvaney, who's a caricature of what a woman is, who thinks it's crying and putting on makeup
And wearing
carrying
heels to go on a hike.
Yeah, and
frolicking
carrying a
in the
purse.
forest.
Yeah, like it's literally laughable and it's disgraceful to equate womanhood to those things. But that's who they have as a spokesperson, and people just flat out are like, you know what? We're not drinking this anymore. And we had big name people like Dana White over, what is it, UFC?
Yeah.
Yeah, over the UFC. And then we had Kid Rock. Like Kid Rock literally stacked up Bud Light beers and then just shot them. A lot. And I think, you know, people like that, they have a huge following, and that just ignited people. Like, the boycott is still happening. I think the one thing that's a super interesting takeaway, though, is now we have Dana White and Kid Rock and even Donald Trump Jr., Donald Trump Jr. from the beginning was like, don't boycott them.
Right.
Which makes me wonder, does he have stock in the company?
Probably.
But Dana White and Kid Rock, they were totally for this boycott, but then Bud Light pays them for a sponsorship, and now they're like,
Hundreds of
"Y'all-"
millions.
Yeah, a lot of money. And they're like, hey guys, just be done with the boycott. They're moving on. We should too. That's wrong.
Well, and I think it just goes to show you the power of the dollar. I mean, I think honestly, this is Bud Light trying to make amends without having to apologize. But ultimately, do not end the boycott until they apologize, until they say, we are sorry that we completely went away from our base, our audience, and our even like semi-family values, if you want to call it that, and promoted someone who has totally the opposite values and lifestyle of the people that are actually drinking our beer and that we're representing. Until they do that, keep boycotting. I don't care how much money they pay Kid Rock and Dana White to advertise their beer and drink their beer. It doesn't matter, because ultimately they still hate us. They still hate our values. And even if it was just some stupid exec up in the company who decided they were going to go in a different direction. Why aren't the executives above her saying, we're sorry, this was not something, we shouldn't have let it go through, this was not something that we really wanted to do. And they should be groveling to get their customers back. But I think it's good that for the most part, it's still continued on.
Well, I'm team boycott forever. I think they've made a mistake and they should never be allowed to come back from it, personally.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, I think the bare minimum is at least don't start drinking it again.
Yeah.
Until...
Even, like, I think maybe if they get all new leadership and then they actually do real America First conservative things, I think everyone who's listening to this podcast, what your goal needs to be is to find ways to buy and promote and support companies who support what you support. And that's really hard in today's economy because, you know, especially with the Biden administration, undid everything that Donald Trump did. So all of our businesses left, went back to China. But I think that, you know, we have to be putting our money where our mouth is, which is a lot harder for some than others.
And I think you just have to do what you can, because I know a lot of people go very hardcore and they boycott everything, and that's great. Like, I'm so glad there are people that are like that.
Yeah.
That's the goal. That's the end goal. But honestly, you know, especially like where we live, like Lakey lives in Kingsport, and that's where she's from. And there are a lot of options. So, like, don't get me wrong, but I live out in the middle of nowhere right now.
Really?
And like, there's only so many options. And so, like, we understand that not everyone has the ability to boycott everything. But one thing I do, like, I've been boycotting Target for over a year, maybe close to 2 years.
We don't go there.
We don't go to Target.
Make a gay baby onesie? We're not showing up.
Not and I know that's hard for some people because it's so convenient and it's very appealing to suburban moms. Like, I love the stuff at Target, except for the gay crap. But I love a lot of the stuff at Target. Like, I love Magnolia. But, like, I'm not going to support a company that, one, has never supported the military, even before all this stuff happened.
Yeah.
They were the first one to start doing the transgender bathroom thing. And then now they're trying to indoctrinate babies into the LGBTQ community. It's weird. Insane. And on a side topic I won't get into too much, but why did Chip and Joanna Gaines not say anything when all this stuff happened? Why did they not pull their line? I'm sorry, you're a professing Christian. You should have said, this is wrong. We do not support this. This does not support our values. We're going to take our line and go somewhere else. And I'm telling you right now, we would have people lining out the door to go buy their stuff. And they already are anyway. So in my opinion, that was a time where they really should have had faith that God was going to provide for them.
I agree.
But I digress. But anyway, we need to keep doing this though with like Disney.
And we're doing good.
Yeah.
Disney's tanking. Every single box office movie is tanking. And I think that, I think it's encouraging.
Yeah.
And we're seeing more like platforms that are rising up. Like the Daily Wire has a platform that is not even devoted to teaching your kid politics at all. But
it's literally just wholesome kids shows.
Yes, with like a mom and a dad that are like good and love each other. And it's just teaching children. It's giving children a form of entertainment that's not also damaging to their like mental state. And I think that's a good thing. And that we'll just move on then and go to our next topic. Don't have a great way to segue the Target stuff and Bud Light stuff to this, but our next one was obviously the Chinese spy balloon.
Yes, and I honestly totally forgot that this happened for some reason. I like remember it once we brought it up when we were like prepping for this, but I was like, wait a minute, there was really a balloon flying over America.
Yeah, and it literally flew over the US for 7 days, but before that, it was on track for months, and our military watched it, and then it watched it over the US, and the only reason they even shot it down was because people in Montana were like, yo, there is something flying over my farm right now.
And they were already probably shooting at it, trying to get it down, but probably couldn't get their bullets that high. But it's really crazy that...
And it was actually huge. It was like the length of so many football fields. I think it was ginormous.
I think it just shows you again where this administration is, where their priorities are. Clearly, Biden and the Biden administration, the people in it, are in bed with China. They don't care really, it's scary, like the power that China has right now. They're laughing at us, and honestly, I think it could be any day that they decide to actually take over, which is really scary. And I'm not saying that to freak you out, but it just goes to show you we have to have people, Republican or Democrat, that are not in bed with these other countries because they make a bunch of money. And it's also infuriating because we've seen the decline in the military with all of this stupid DEI stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think this is just another element of that.
Yeah, and it's not funny because the situation is extremely serious, but I do think it's kind of funny that Xi Jinping is like, yo, why'd you shoot our spy balloon down? That's really uncalled for. Give it back. We want all the footage. Like, why does he think he can make demands? But what's so funny is, and this is not funny, this is cowardly and disgusting, but all of our leaders are like, we are so sorry, Xi Jinping. We are so sorry, but we can't
Please
provide
forgive
this.
us.
We can't provide this to you right now. It's like, no, just literally grow a pair, be a man, be a leader, and be like, this is uncalled for. This is an act of war. Do this again. There's going to be serious consequences.
Right, and you should be thankful that there aren't serious consequences now.
And with Donald Trump, there never was a chance.
I was going
for
to say,
following.
and it would have never happened to begin with.
But with some leaders that we've been casting out and everything, I think that takes us to our very next topic.
Yeah.
Of Kevin McCarthy being ousted as Speaker of the House, and this is the first time in history this has ever happened.
Yes, and it was already hard enough to get him voted in as the Speaker because there was a sect of the Republicans who were like, no, we really want to hold him accountable and make sure that when he is the Speaker that he will actually do things that and implement policies that are good for the American people and for our values. And at this point, I mean, he wasn't really doing it. He was just trying to, he
went back on his word. So basically the whole reason this started was Kevin McCarthy promised separate bills for separate issues for the budget. But then he comes with this huge one bill for the entire budget. And that made a lot of conservatives mad. And Matt Gaetz actually was like, no, we're not doing this right now. And, well, I don't know if it was right to oust him or if it was the smartest course of action, because I really did not foresee us winning another speaker positions. I didn't know how it was going to work out. I think it is for the best.
It did put us in a vulnerable position because ultimately the Democrats could have gained enough support to put someone that they wanted up as Speaker. So it was a vulnerable position, but I think it paid off because now
I like Mike Johnson.
I do too. So that's who was unanimously
voted in, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see what my fellow Southern Baptists can do.
Yeah, we'll see what. Hopefully, most of what I've seen so far, I like. I like that he's a Christian. I like that he's outspoken about it. I like that I think, is a genuine conservative, and I hope that he stays that way. I hope that he doesn't fall to all the swampy crap that goes on in DC, but I'm hopeful, and I think that he's a much better pick than Kevin McCarthy. I've never been a huge McCarthy fan. It's like Mitch McConnell. These people, they've been in office so long, they're so milk toast. I'm so tired of the milk toast, wishy-washy, squishy Republicans. It's so obnoxious. They're not getting anything done. So I'm also glad that Republican leadership held him accountable, because I don't know that we've never seen somebody ousted, but we've never seen it to that. We've never seen somebody held accountable to that extent, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and now he's actually not even going to run for re-election. He's done. So I'm excited to get a new person in. I think it's great. And bringing us to our next headline, somebody who does always succumb to these whims of the establishment is Fox News. Yeah. And they actually let go of Tucker Carlson.
Speaking of oustings.
Speaking of oustings. But I really think that this has been an amazing thing for Tucker's career. It's been a horrible thing for Fox. He was getting the most views of any late night talk show.
His primetime show was,
he was getting more views than anything on TV.
Yeah.
And that's just really telling that Fox really is following the establishment, the money.
And we've seen the internal memos that show how woke Fox News really is. And I think it's really sad because it used to be the news that you could rely on, and now we've lost yet another outlet. And it's still
the best.
we've got. Yeah. I like the Daily Wire a lot. I think they do great journalism. I think obviously Fox News is still bigger, but in terms of cable prime time news coverage, they're still the best, but unfortunately they've gone woke in a lot of ways. But Tucker has been doing great. He moved, when this initially happened, he moved all of his shows and interviews and things to X or Twitter. Yeah. And
it's been awesome.
he had the most watched interview when he interviewed Andrew Tate, the most watched interview ever. Yeah. So he's doing great.
Really doing awesome.
Yeah, and now he started his own
company.
It's like Tucker Carlson News Network, something
yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
It's something. It's gonna be huge. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, or Tucker Carlson Network, that's what it is, TCN. So
It's gonna be
I think it's
real.
going to be great, and I'm really excited to see what he does. I love Tucker Carlson. He always provides so much good insight, and he's willing to ask the questions that nobody else is willing to ask and discuss topics that a lot of people are too afraid to talk about. So I'm excited for that.
And and then, like I think another quick mention of an exciting topic that we have for the year is the Asbury Revival.
Yeah.
While I don't think we can be 100% sure, like if it was truthfully genuine or if it wasn't, I think I'm just excited to see people who are trying to pursue the Lord. And even if it's just like worship that continues, and it's prayer, I think that's an awesome thing.
Well, I think the Lord, even if it isn't like a real revival or it's not genuine or whatever, it was kind of manufactured, I think the Lord still works in those moments. People who maybe would have never gone to chapel, because just because you go to a Christian college doesn't mean that everyone there is a believer. So, I mean, people that would have never gone to a worship service or a chapel, whatever, were intrigued and decided to go in, and hopefully the truth and the actual gospel, were being spread and told to these people, and students were being prayed with. And I pray that the people who, they said were saved are still, are actually saved,
like
that they're still
out.
living it out. They're still going to church and trying to live for the Lord. So I think overall it's a good thing. And I think at least at the bare minimum, it gained national attention and caught the attention of people who maybe aren't saved or maybe are questioning their faith or whatever. And this at least pushed them into getting to know more about the Christian faith.
Yeah, it put Jesus kind of on the forefront. And that's actually what these upcoming movies did too. We think that another important topic is that there were successful box office debuts for Nefarious, Jesus Revolution, and The Sound of Freedom.
Which, for those, the money that was spent on those movies, in comparison to big movies from like Disney and other Hollywood movies.
Also, the story that it's telling compared to other Hollywood movies.
The money they spent was a fraction, but their return was huge. Meanwhile, Disney is struggling even just
flopping.
I was going to say they're just struggling just to make back what they spent and to break out even. But I don't know. We didn't get to see Nefarious, but I heard it was really good. I didn't get to see Jesus Revolution either, but I heard it was also really
I've watched
good.
it so many times, and I was able to watch it with some of my friends who didn't know about the Lord, and they were able to like relate to this movie, and it kind of set them on the path of wanting to discover more about Jesus. So I think overall, of course, Hollywood is still overwhelmingly disgusting and terrible, but I think that there are people who are trying to break down that barrier and put Jesus back at the forefront with their values.
And even like Sound of Freedom, which wasn't primarily Jesus focused, it was, there were elements of it, but
that also though that should not even be something that Hollywood does not like.
It should be political, but it's very interesting. If you don't know what Sound of Freedom is, it's about human trafficking, specifically child sex trafficking. It's very interesting how angry people in Hollywood were. It was very interesting. And then, of course that leads into our next topic, but I'll just say this about Sound of Freedom. It really exposed, and I think it was very well made, what's really going on with human trafficking, specifically with children and sex trafficking. It's very scary. It was a very difficult movie to watch, but I think that the people making the movie are doing the Lord's work. I think that this has really shown a light on the seriousness of this. I think it has lit a fire under a lot of people to really get motivated about doing something, at least to the best of our abilities. And at least praying for the situation and praying that we'll have guidance as a country, as individuals. But like I said, it goes into our next topic because Jeffrey Epstein's island guest list is set to come out,
and they did release some.
They released some of it. I'm pretty sure there were a lot of people on there who it's not shocking, and there's a lot of other people who you wouldn't necessarily expect.
Obviously you've got the Bidens on there, the Obamas, the Whoopi Goldberg
was
the
on
Clintons,
there,
and you have all these big name people who are going
Hollywood
to the island
people
to rape children.
Yeah,
that's what his island was for. And I think it's extremely ironic that because Donald Trump spoke to Jeffrey Epstein, they try to say that he has links and is a predator and a pedophile, although his name is never been on that guest list. It's not on there.
Yeah.
But all of these people who are accusing him of this and who are supposed to be champions for rights and all this different stuff, they're the ones who are going and literally doing this.
Yeah, and I think it just shows you when Donald Trump said he was going to drain the swamp, he didn't drain it, but he did start.
He poked holes for sure.
He poked holes. And I think that it just shows, again, going back to why they're taking him off the ballot, why they're so scared of him, because
Exactly.
he is a billionaire. He's in the elite class. He knows what these people do. He knows these people fairly personally. And I think that's why they're so scared, because they know he knows what they're doing.
And I think, too, while he's not a nice person, he's also not a pedophile. He's not a predator.
Pedophile at all.
And he's just a businessman. He's a New York businessman. And he doesn't have these horrible, dark things in the closet that these other people do have. And he is going to bring light to that.
Which is why they try to find any little thing they can to bring up from his past. Like when they, the whole like comments that he made, I'm not going to repeat them, like the locker room talk.
Doesn't make it good.
It's not good.
Right.
I don't agree with it. I think it's wrong. I don't think that Donald Trump is a Christian, but I do think that at the bare minimum, he was always kind of open about those things. Like he
says half of it on stage.
I was gonna say he's at least honest about it. He's just the typical New York businessman, like he said. So ultimately, I hope that the rest of the list, I hope the full list is released, and I hope these people are prosecuted and hanged. To be honest with you,
yes, and I hope we protect the lady who voted to send them out, because we really do need to protect her at all costs, because I know she's got a target on her back now.
Yeah, I hope that she's protected. I hope these people are punished to the fullest extent of the law. And I know that regardless of whether justice happens on this earth or not, it will happen in the afterlife. So I mean, I'm thankful for that.
Mm-hmm. But not even just if the Bidens go to the Epstein's Island, they've done a lot of stuff, and that kind of takes us to our next headline. We've got Biden's impeachment and Hunter Biden, all of his issues.
The scandal that's going on with that. Yeah,
basically, Hunter Biden, he evaded millions of dollars worth in taxes that he then spent on prostitutes, drugs, strippers, luxury vacations. You think about it, he paid for it, and he did it with the money that he didn't pay in taxes, yet we're paying so much. And I think it's really funny because they're supposed to be champions for the rich do their fair share, and they're sitting there evading taxes.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing, if you don't understand, because there's a lot going on, there was a whole thing with his laptop and all this stuff, but basically Hunter Biden was sitting on an oil company, Burisma, in
Ukraine.
Yeah, in Ukraine. So, and there are other like top politicians and people in this country. Like Nikki Haley sat on this board at one
Mitt
point.
Romney's kid.
Yeah,
a lot of politicians' children sit on this board.
Yes.
Basically, it's a oil company with a board with people who have no
clue,
no knowledge of oil, no knowledge of how to run a business. Maybe they don't even have a college degree. They're sitting on this board and they are getting paid millions of dollars every month. And this is why I will say, why do you think that Joe Biden and all these Democrats want to send, and a lot of Republicans want to send our money to Ukraine? Because they're immediately getting it kicked back into their pockets.
Exactly. It's truly like baffling how criminal this is. And the thing with Hunter Biden is he, like she said, has no experience in the oil and gas industry.
No, he's a loser.
He's literally just sitting on this board not doing anything. But the whole thing was that Biden and Joe Biden and Hunter completely denied that Hunter ever discussed his business dealings with his dad, but then it came out that that wasn't true. And then they said, well, we didn't talk anything financial, but that also came out to not be true either. So that's why this is a potential impeachment. We don't know how that's going to play out yet, but hopefully, I mean, on the one hand, I want him to be impeached and removed, but on the other hand, like I really would rather not have Kamala Harris as our president, because that would be 10 times worse than what we've got now, if you can even believe it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we just finish this out and then never see them again.
Yeah.
Let's finish out the term and then run away.
Let's just pray that 2024 will have a different election.
Seriously, pray. Like,
honestly, speaking of weird things going on in Congress, this was pretty recent, but we had
we included it because it was so mind-boggling. There was literally a gay sex video filmed in the Senate hearing room.
Yeah, and we're not going to show any pictures or clips that
because
we blurred because it's disgusting.
I personally don't even want to think about it.
No.
Even if it was heterosexual, like that's disgusting and weird. And what I think is one, what? Two, why? And then three, what I think is really crazy is all of these lib woke papers are saying that because people are outraged that this happened in the Senate hearing room, it's because we're homophobic.
No, I would if it was oh my gosh, if it was heterosexual, I would be completely outraged and disgusted. And the thing is, what's so ironic is that these people that are saying it's homophobic for us to think that because it's just them showing an act of love. Well, first of all, your act of love is wrong. It's not an act of love, it's an act of lust, first of all. Second of all,
you don't do that in public.
You don't do that in public. You don't do it in the Senate hearing room. But then again, the Democrats want to talk about how Trump has made America the laughingstock of the country. No. But not to mention, if it was the other way around where it was a heterosexual couple, the liberals would be like, oh, well, see, all you straight people are trying to shove your sexuality down our throats and blah, blah, blah. No. And we would have still spoken out against it. It's disgusting regardless.
Yeah, I think the last point we'll make on this is I think it just shows how far the LGBTQ ideology has set into people's minds that they think it is appropriate or a turn on to do something like that in public, film it and post it and expect to have no repercussions.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say on that. Yeah. And then since we are from Tennessee, we're just going to combine our last little two headlines. We're going to give you two Tennessee big news. So the insurrection in the Tennessee state capitol. Some people say it's an insurrection, some people won't. I don't know.
I'd say we're going to use their language against them. If they're going to say that January 6th was an insurrection, which it wasn't, then I'd say that was an insurrection. But I actually think this could be classified as an insurrection.
Yeah, they stormed the floor,
state capitol. Yeah,
and they stormed the floor, which through the help of the Tennessee Three, which was one of them was Gloria
Johnson, right?
Yeah.
Gloria
and
Johnson.
She's actually running for senator now.
Lord
and then two of them were these two black guys, and of course Tennessee's racist because they expelled the two black guys and they kept her, even though they all should have been expelled. Basically, they didn't expel her because she didn't hold the megaphone, which is something in their bylaws where it says if you bring in a megaphone, you're gonna be ousted, impeached, and it's a whole mess. I ultimately think that it's ironic to see the left think that this is a totally appropriate way to behave, but anytime the right even has a simple pro-life march or a peaceful pro-life setup where you show graphic abortion images, that's wrong, that's terrible, that's violent. But then you actually have people who are being physically violent and threatening and screaming
and invading a capitol, no security. You have no idea what these people have on them, and they're just running in, which you could argue happened January 6th, but I think there is a stark difference because
no cops were doing this.
I was going to say
ours,
and not to mention Congress. I believe the General Assembly was in session when this happened. These people had to be taken out and secure. It was a whole mess. And so if they're going to call January 6th an insurrection, and this was an insurrection, but
it has the exact same.
The reason they were doing this was in response to the Covenant school shooting and was for advocating for gun control. And obviously, I'm from Nashville, so I have connections to people who were involved in this. But as tragic as that school shooting was, and it's so tragic.
It's horrible.
And you shouldn't be, kids should not have to fear for their lives when they go to school.
And we should also not be desensitized to a school shooting.
No, but that's what's happened. Ultimately, the response is always this political response. You can't even breathe for half a second to just mourn. The solution was never going to be gun control. No. It's never going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
But really, soft on crime policies. And not to mention, they wouldn't even talk about the fact that the person that committed the shooting had a manifesto that was anti-white. This person was transgender and had gone to the school and was angry because of the school's views on that lifestyle.
Yeah, clearly the person. I mean, if you're transgender, you have severe mental disability, mental illness. Maybe mental disability, but you've got something going on, and you need help. And if we cannot, as a society, qualify mental illness for mental illness, we're never going to be able to stop that school shooting from happening. And then I think the craziest thing that came out of this were people saying that it was actually justified. I think it's very similar to what we're seeing with this Hamas and Israel conflict of justifying an atrocity. there's no grounds to do that.
And I think ultimately there is a level of mental illness involved, but I also think there's a level of just
evil.
sin. I was going to say sin, because just because you have mental illness doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be violent or you are violent. But I think there is.
Well, she was
an
on the
interesting-
drugs.
She was
on
drugs.
testosterone.
And I was going to say, like, as you know, this person was a woman who identified as a male, was taking these drugs. Like, this is something that is really scary about this whole transgender movement, especially with children, because your body is made to go through a certain type of puberty to produce a certain type of hormones. When those levels are off, even women who start taking birth control, which I know this is going to ruffle feathers, but even women who start taking birth control start having all these mood swings, and it's kind of crazy how much it will change you and your personality and your inclinations. Imagine what giving a boatload of artificial testosterone does to people, especially because we know testosterone makes people more aggressive, more angry. It's really not that shocking that someone who probably listens to a lot of other people who are like, people hate me because I'm transgender, and they're, you know, white people are horrible and evil and Christians are awful. That gets in your mind. Plus you've got the testosterone, plus you've got the sin. It's just not a good combination.
Yeah.
So I think there's a deeper root issue here that is not being addressed whatsoever.
Yeah.
And the answer is not this like surface level, just ban all guns.
No, actually, the best thing would be is to, you know, fix our gun laws so that if you're actually going to have a background check, and mental illness is going to qualify as something that would disqualify you from having a gun, then we're going to have to put transgenderism on that list.
And also, there's a whole issue with the HIPAA violations too, so you've got to take that into consideration.
Yeah.
Like, are you allowed to look into that background or not? And I agree. I think we have to put, are you transgender? I mean, I know that sounds, I'm all about people having the right to defend themselves, but also like at some point you have to go through, it used to be before you could even transition way back in the day that you had to go get a letter from a psychiatrist that said that you were in the mental headspace to know what you were doing. But the game is totally changed at this point, especially when you've got, you know, children transitioning. So there's a whole lot of things that need to change. And I think another thing too is like our school security is awful. It's terrible. Why don't we have more school resource officers?
Well, and this was a private school, so I'm not sure what their resources was. I know I went to a private school and I did not have that luxury. So
yeah,
because I mean we just didn't have the funding for it. But that kind of takes us into our next headline of Tennessee did pass a law about ESAs, which is going to help with school choice.
Yeah.
What they're working on right now is, I guess, determining how much money. I think they're looking at about $7,500 a student, which will really be awesome, especially like from my perspective as a person who did go to a Christian school from a single income family. My dad worked ridiculously hard for us, and he still does, so that we could have that education.
Right.
To be able to have the opportunity to just take the taxpayer dollars to follow your kid rather than
school.
Mm-hmm. There are some people though raising concerns because there is a stipulation in there about homeschoolers. If they want the money, then they need to conform to like state standards. And I think if they make the state standards very clear, I personally don't see a problem with that, because I do think that no schooling, which is where you homeschool your kids but you just like take them to get ice cream and you go on a hike as school, I do think that we need to make sure that that's not what $7,500 is going towards, like a vacation or anything. So I do believe there needs to be some accountability. Like with the Ukraine money, we're just giving this money without any accountability. Right. We have to have somewhat of accountability there. I just think they need to make it very clear language, and then I'm all for it. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, I think this is, I know people, even conservatives don't really understand school choice, and maybe we'll do a whole episode
We
on
really
that,
should,
because
a lot of teachers hate it.
There are a lot of public school teachers will get really angry about this. Here's the deal. We've got thousands of dollars per student that is being sent to their zoned school. And we saw this in the Obama administration. He threw so much money in the Department of Education and the school systems, and test scores didn't change at all.
Exactly.
So clearly the money is not the issue. It's the use of the resources. I think when you think about, because the one reason that people are very bent out of shape about private schools and homeschooling versus public schools, they said, well, there are people who are in a position where they can't homeschool, they can't private school. Totally understand that.
Why is that?
Why not?
Because there's no school choice.
Exactly. So here's the thing. If you give people who live in parts of town where the schools are bad, I'm from Nashville, I know this. I mean, thankfully I was able to go to a magnet school, but that was just, I mean, test scores, but honestly, pure luck, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. Like, I never win any raffles, but I won that one
Yeah.
for some reason.
Praise the Lord.
And so, but obviously we had to qualify with test scores. But even then, like, you had kids who had been on the waiting list for literally the entire time they were in high school, and they just had to go to their public school that wasn't that good because they couldn't get in. And if they had been able to take that money, their parents, and say, hey, I want to take this money and use this to send my kid to this public school or to this private school, or I'm going to stay home and homeschool. You know how many families would benefit tremendously that want to homeschool if they could have that money, or even the private school.
Literally my family, you know.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have an option, I was going to have to go to a school that just wasn't that great. And my parents were like, you know, we just feel called to send them to have a Christian education and to just be able to have a good education that's going to set them up for success in life.
Right.
And, you know, I'm very thankful for that. And, yeah, I think if we can just have that money, and if this bill will really be followed through on and acted upon, it's going to be an awesome thing for the state of Tennessee. And I'll just say it's about time, because we've been super majority red for pretty much a very...
Decades at this point.
Decades. And we've done nothing. So once again, I think it's just time we need to hold our leaders accountable. We need to have new people run. We need to just go ahead and clean house.
I agree.
Even on the state level.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few really good ones in there, but honestly, there's a lot of ones that are just not doing what they need to be doing. So I think this is an improvement. I think this is good.
Yeah. So that actually just wraps up like all of our headlines. I know it's kind of a lot of headlines, but it was a crazy year.
It really was. A lot of things happened, and we wanted to give you a rundown and remind you of some things that had happened that you may have forgotten about. And don't forget about these things, because they're still important. Like, you know, train derailments still have an effect. The Israel-Hamas conflict, even though it's only been a couple months, a lot of people have forgotten about it. So these things are important. We need to keep fighting, but we just wanted to do that. And then we have a lot of future episodes that are coming out we're really excited about.
Very excited, and articles are going to be resuming regularly, and we've just got a great plan for this year.
We're really excited. As always, if you will just follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our Substack. If you have any comments, concerns,
questions,
tag us on Instagram, comment, DM us, email us, unfacedcommentary@gmail.com, and I think that's about it, honestly.
Yeah,
we'll
we're ready
tag
to go.
all of that in the description, so we're really excited.
Yeah, but all right. Bye, y'all. See you next time.